بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله خاتم الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. Brothers and sisters جميعا, السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I am honored to be invited again to join with you tonight for a discussion on some of the key points regarding what it means to be a Shia, how do we display our Shi'ism, and what is the lecture of this title, Social Phenomena of Shi'ism. This continues from some of the discussions we had early on this year regarding the political biography of the Imams, wherein part of my research, part of my discussion around this field is to see how did Shi'ism evolve? What is original Shia Islam? How did someone become a Shia Muslim? Is it a historical fact only? Or was it something that was developed by the Imams and their followers, or by the scholars? As some of the Orientalists say, that after the Ghaiba al-Kubra, the scholars developed Shia Islam. I'm very interested to research the beginnings, the roots of Shia Islam, and to see what the identity of a Tashayyu is. And part of the question is, how is it that when we see somebody, we can instantly tell that they are Shia, a group of people? So we can notice from their occasions, for example, sometimes from their dress, sometimes the type of ring they wear on their hands. These are things that are sometimes cultural, but also sometimes handed down based on narrations from the Imams on what is recommended and what should be abstained from. A part of it is also because the Imams themselves wanted a public display of emotion and a public display of loyalty to the Ahlul Bayt. And for example, we have the several narrations to this effect. شيعتنا خلقوا من فاضل طينتنا يفرحون لفرحنا ويحزنون لحزننا. Our Shia, our supporters, the people who follow us, the Ahlul Bayt, were created from what was left of our essence. When Allah created the first life, when Allah created the first lights, what remained of our creation became our followers. In effect, this narration is saying that you are destined to be a follower of the Ahlul Bayt or not. You are destined to be one who loves the Ahlul Bayt or not. You are destined to be Shia or not. And hence we also have sometimes the terms, when we read some of the books of hadith and some of the books of the fiqh, we hear the terms al-amma wal-khassa, the general, who are those who do not follow the Ahlul Bayt, and the khassa, the special, the private group, who are the followers of the Ahlul Bayt. And this narration lends to the fact that to be a follower of the Ahlul Bayt is in a way a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It isn't something that is easily attained. It isn't something that you have an automatic right to do. And the narration continues saying, this Shia of ours will be happy on our happy occasions and will be sad with us for our sorrows on our sad occasions. So that does not mean only to feel inside some sadness or happiness on their occasions, but to actually celebrate or mourn these occasions. So the Imam here is praising this and saying this is the type of Shia that we are proud of, one who remembers us in these occasions. So instinctively, when we want to show that we are loyal to the Bayt, we display emotion, we celebrate occasions. And in this is a sign of loyalty and a sign of test of faith in difficult times sometimes. If we go back to the history of Shi'ism, for example, in Baghdad 1,000 years ago, during the time of Shaykh al-Mufid, or during the time of Sayyid al-Murtada, or Shaykh al-Tusi, it was very difficult at times to become a Shia. Shaykh al-Tusi had to leave Baghdad, which was the heart of Shia Islam, and move to Najaf and set up his school over there. He was forced out. Why? Because there were certain occasions that landed you in trouble. For example, the processions on Ashura, or the celebrations of the 15th of Sha'ban. When the Seljukids arrived, they banned all this. They did not allow public displays. So to show, in the words of the Imam, to show happiness for their happy occasions isn't straightforward sometimes. It lands you in trouble. And we see across the Middle East sometimes when people are restricted to how much they can show of their Shi'ism. We have a similar hadith with Imam Sadiq Salamullah when he says to Fadail, he says to him, do you sit and talk amongst you? This is during the lifetime of the Imam, during the latter part of the lifetime of the Imam, when the Abbasids, specifically Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, were much more stronger than the early part of the Imam's life. And they clamped down heavily on the activities of people like Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. And he says, do you sit and talk between yourselves? Do you communicate? Do you have discussions in which you remember Allah and you remember us? And Fadail says, yes, we do. We sit in these gatherings of ours, sometimes private, sometimes in secret, and we have these kind of discussions. Not for the public, but for some select people who understand the depth of some of these topics. And the Imam says, I approve of these meetings. These are meetings that will earn you reward. Carry on in these sessions. And he asked him specifically, do you remember us in these meetings? Do you remember us in these sessions? And he says, yes. Yes, this is exactly what we do. We discuss about worship, we discuss about Allah, and we discuss about obedience to you, Ahlul Bayt. A third narration that the Imam, also Sadiq Salamullah alayhi, narrates, and he says, our Shia are the ones who have been intermixed with our leadership. We lead them and they reflect our glory. So that Imam Sadiq says, become a source of pride. Do not become a source of criticism. So that when people see you, they say, this person is from the Shia of Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq. And they say it in a way that shows pride. Not in a way where they say, oh, this person's a follower of Ja'far al-Sadiq. That means this person should be criticized. And the school of Ja'far al-Sadiq should be criticized. So how do we, in modern life or modern day, how do we notice these public displays? And I'll come to that. There are 4 categories as part of my research and discussion into this. There are 4 categories of public displays or social phenomena, as I've called them, of Shi'ism. There is one overarching principle. There is one element that is common to all of these. And that is the human element. I'll explain that. Let me give you an example. If I were to bring out a charity box here and I'd say, I want to collect from all of you charity. I'm going to give it to a good cause. I'm not going to give you too much detail. All I will say is this is going to go to sadaqah or a good cause. It's going to go to needy people. Maybe I'll collect in a session like this, 20, 50, 100 pounds. Maghdad doesn't think so, maybe less. We'll see, but a small amount. Let me bring out a picture, a photograph, and show you a child who's very, very hungry. You can see he's emaciated. He's almost starving to death. Will that have an effect on how much you give? Of course. You'll probably give double that. If you were going to give £2, you'll give 5. If you were going to give 5, you'll give 10. Because it has an emotional effect on you. And this example is to highlight the power of the social phenomenon in Shia Islam and the power of the Ahlul Bayt on people. If Allah was only to say, worship me and talk only about me, we might reach a point where our limited understanding would not be able to move beyond. But when we see 14 lights created by Allah, and we have a happy occasion for them, their births, and a sad occasion for them, their deaths, and their life stories, and Allah says, if you love me, love them. If you want to reach me, learn about them. If you want to learn more about Tawheed and justice and Al-Akhirah, listen to their words, study their sciences. This is not a precedent. I'm not saying something that hasn't been said before. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says the same thing. He says, أَنَا مَدِينَةُ الْعِلْمِ وَعَلِيٌّ بَابَهَا. Whoever wants to come and enter the city of knowledge must come through its gates. Purposely saying, don't come to me directly only. I want you to meet Ali ibn Abi Talib. I want you to talk to him. I want you to understand him. There is a reasoning behind this. And this is why the example of a human character has a profound effect on people. Why does not Allah reveal directly to each one of us? Why does He use a prophet? Surely Allah has the power. We know He does. In an instant, He could beam into each one of our hearts and minds total belief in Allah, total understanding about religion. Yet He chooses a human element. He uses a prophet and uses hundreds and thousands of them to say, if you want to learn more about me, listen to these prophets. These are my spokesmen on earth. These are the people I want you to follow. So the overarching principles, I said, what is common between the categories we're going to discuss is that Allah wants us to be tied to these individuals, to these 14 infallibles. He wants us to heed their words, understand them, live our lives as if they are still with us. And this is why when the young brother had a brief discussion on the wafat, the shahada of Imam Muhammad Taqi, Muhammad Jiyad, when we always start our discussions, we remember Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman, our 12th Imam. We commiserate him on this occasion. He's the living Imam. He's amongst us at this time. The 4 categories, if we'll start with, the first, I believe, is dua. This is a social phenomenon. And we look at some of the great du'as that we recite on a weekly basis. Dua Kumail, Hadith al-Kisa, Dua Tawassul. We have the ahadith that we recite after prayer, taqibat, the daily prayers. The ahadith that we recite on special occasions, Dua al-Iftitah in the month of Ramadan, Dua Arafah, which is for those who are here not able to go to the Hajj, and also those who are lucky to go on the Hajj this year. They will recite Dua Arafah on the 9th day of the Hijjah. And other occasions when we have these beautiful du'as from many of the Imams. This is a social phenomenon. Why? Because you need to understand the dua, listen to its words. Many of us will recite it in a group. Many of us will go to a center or a mosque, one of our community organizations, and sit and hear a reciter read it. Sometimes we'll see it on screen. It adds an extra incentive for you to meet with other Shias to recite this dua. Sometimes we say certain dua has a place to be recited. Those of you who have been fortunate to go on the Hajj, you'll notice how beautiful the recitation of Dua Kumail is on Thursday night in Medina. It's a brilliant feeling. It's something that gives you energy. It's extra special. You can recite it in your house. You can recite it on the way to work, on the way back home, before you go to bed. But reciting it in Medina on a Thursday night has a special taste to it. And there is a power behind this. When you hear 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 Shias reciting Dua Kumail together, it gives you a special energy, does it not? So dua is one of those things that has an impact. And it is one of those things that I'm ascribing to the categories of social phenomena of Shia Islam. And the Imams have very deliberately given us beautiful du'as, lots of meanings in them. In their words, in their short hadith, sometimes it's very difficult to understand the deep meaning. But when we read the long du'a, it's much more easier for us to listen to what the Imam is really trying to say. They describe the attributes of Allah. They describe the beauty of Allah's justice. They tackle subjects like free will. Things that you would need to spend years and years on a course, and you would have to follow a teacher after teacher, read book after book, in a few words. In a few simple words, so it seems, the Imam is able to give you this doctrine of faith. And it's this elegance and this brilliant way of explaining something while making you feel spiritual at the same time. So it's like you're attending a class while you're in the mosque. So you read the hadith, it's as if you were sitting in a university lecture, but at the same time you're probably in the mihrab praying towards Allah. It's this excellent combination between the two, excellent balance between the two that makes dua special. So that is one of the first public displays of emotion and one of the first phenomena of Shia Islam, social phenomena. The second, I would like to argue, is study of the sciences of the Ahl Bayt, specifically the study that we see in the traditional houses. Because all the ulama that go on to study, they will recite, they will learn, they will study, they will analyze hadith. One of the key elements of study at houses is hadith. It is what underpins the study of aqaid, beliefs, underpins the study of tafsir, underpins the study of fiqh, ilm al-rijal, and so on and so forth. For you to understand, begin to understand these sciences, you must be able to read hadith, read what the words of the Ahl Bayt are. And when you read, and sometimes when you go on to become a mujtahid, or sometimes when you go on to become a higher class of scholar, you receive an ijazah. Everyone has heard of the ijazah of ijtihad, but there is also the ijazah of riwayah, which means you narrate. You have taken the narrations from your teacher, who has taken it from his teacher, from his teacher, from his teacher, and it is traced back to the first generation of scholars. For example, from Shaykh al-Saduq. Shaykh al-Saduq heard it from his father. His father was in the same prison cell as Imam Muhammad, as Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, for example. And he complained to the Imam. He said, unfortunately, I have not been blessed with a child. And the Imam prayed. He said, may Allah bless you with a child full of wisdom. And that is why it is said that Shaykh al-Saduq was born at the prayer of the 11th Imam. So Shaykh al-Saduq took his hadith from a prime source, which is the Imam. Likewise, Shaykh al-Mufid, they heard it from companions of the Imams. And these companions, we know, spent their lives dedicated to the Imams. They were tested by various things, by the intrigues of the Abbasids, by the intrigues of the Waqifiyya, for example, and the other sects, by various political grievances during the time. Yet they maintained the faith to the Imams. And we take our hadith from them. So when we sit in our circles, if we're fortunate enough to go and study in the seminaries, and we learn about the sciences of the Ahl Bayt, essentially we are studying the words of the Ahl Bayt. This is a phenomenon by itself. To see 50,000 people, 100,000 people congregated in one small city, it looks as if it hasn't changed for the past 1,000 years, maybe more, and sitting and discussing the words of the Ahl Bayt, and understanding and reading the words of the Ahl Bayt, and receiving an ijazah, receiving permission to narrate these words to the next generation. And this chain has gone on for over 1,000 years. This is by itself a social phenomenon, not to be underestimated. This is a strength. And in these seminaries that are not controlled by governments, that are not affected by how well the country is doing or who the ruler of the time is, to keep this link for over 1,000 years, it's something special. And to be determined that this method of study is not decided in ministries and not decided by professors, it is decided by the content itself. The Ahlul Bayt themselves left behind saying, if you want to follow the scholars after us, follow the people who narrate our hadith. Any hadith that goes against the book of Allah, discard it. General principles. And to learn from our scholars what they have learned from their teachers, from their teachers, from their teachers, tells us that this is a force by itself. This is an element of strength to be able to say, I am studying something that was said 1,000 years ago, 1,200 years ago, 1,300 years ago, and I still have it with me today. It is uncorrupted, and I'm going to try to understand it and analyze it. When I have some ambiguity in my mind over whether this is completely true or not, I'm going to devote a science towards this. And it has been done. There are sciences called, for example, Ilm al-Diraya or Ilm al-Rijal, commonly categorized under the group of Ilm al-Hadith, the science of Hadith. So this is the second part of the social phenomena. And in it we see dedication. People sometimes leave their villages, leave behind their families, and they walk miles. Sometimes they journey for months, even in this modern day world. They journey for weeks at a time to try to reach somewhere where they're not sure of how they're going to live for the next day, but their main goal is to try to study. Some of our great scholars, I heard the story from Shaykh Ishaq al-Fayyad, Ayatollah al-Azman Shaykh Ishaq al-Fayyad. He says, I suffered until I became a scholar. I used to sit outside the mosque under the beating sun so that I could hear from the window the classes, the lessons, Dars al-Kharij of Ayatollah Khui. I was not privileged enough to be allowed inside. I was deemed as a lower class of scholar, so I had to sit outside. And I would take my cloak and put it over my head. The sun was beating on me. My mouth and tongue was parched. I was so thirsty. Sometimes I wanted to collapse because of the heat of the sun, but also that I could strain to hear the dars, the lesson of Ayatollah Khui. This is a phenomenon. What makes a man, if we were to take the Islamic element out of this, what makes a man crazy enough to sit under the sun for no pay, for no immediate gain, years at a time, at a great cost to his family and to his health and maybe to his sanity, to strain outside a window to hear somebody say something that was said from 1,000 years ago? This is a test. Surely this is a phenomena that needs to be understood. Not only understood, but protected and elevated to the status of any great work that we have or any great culture. That we have people who are this much dedication to this study. So this is a part of the social phenomenon I'm talking about. The third category is the majalis, the occasions where we specifically remember the Ahlul Bayt, where we have poetry, for example, when we have a scholar sit and give us, or stand and give us a 45-minute lecture, an hour lecture on the merits of the Ahlul Bayt, describing, for example, their lives, describing their deaths. We also have, for example, the human element again. When we hear, for example, about Al-Abbas, You feel a connection with him. When we hear about Zainab salamullahi alayhi, or Fatima al-Zahra, you feel a connection. You feel immediately this human bond between you and them. When you hear about Fatima al-Zahra, any woman feels some sort of shared tribulation with her, that she went through a difficult time. She lost her father. She remained with her husband through a difficult time. She died a sad death. All women relate to this. Likewise, when we hear about Al-Abbas going to bring water back for his family, being the last to remain with his brother, saddening to see him surrounded by enemies, we feel a connection with that. All men do feel a connection with that. And the power of this majalis is to re-energize that connection. Again, we're not trying to detract away from the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The whole point is to increase our awareness of this worship. Because Imam al-Hussein sacrificed himself, what he sacrificed for must be great, and that is the worship of Allah. And he says, إِنِّي لَمْ أَخْرُجُ أَشْرًا وَلَا بَطْرًا. He says, I have not left to make mischief, nor to seek position or power. I have left only to bring back the sunnah of my grandfather. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. This is what I'm coming out for. And so when we look at his life story, or when we hear in the majalis these incidences from their life, the whole point is for us to understand what is it they sacrificed for. And that is for the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Finally, the ziyarah. And you will see, inshallah, in under 2-3 months' time, you will see millions make their way to Karbala. You'll see people walk 10 days, 12 days, 15 days. You'll see people walking from Kuwait, from Mashhad, from Turkey. And this is a dangerous journey, even in today's modern world. It's a difficult journey. The elements, the weather, the security, unfortunately. Every year a group of people are targeted. Your own personal health. Some people are struggling. Some people are 60, 70, 80 years old. Yet they are still determined to go on this ziyarah. Why go on this ziyarah? Not just because it's a badge of honor to say, well, I did the ziyarah, look at me, I made it through. Everybody congratulate me, tap me on the back. No. Nor is it just to join in with everybody else. This ziyarah is walking in the same footsteps as Zayn al-Abidin salamullahi alayhi, as Zaynab salamullahi alayhi. They had to walk this journey. They didn't take any cars. They didn't fly in planes. They had to journey from Sham all the way to Karbala, and carried amongst them with their heads of their fathers, their brothers, their uncles, their sons, their nephews, their cousins, their companions, their friends, carried with them. And they walked. They spent days and days walking. So when we walk on these occasions, it is a symbolic bond to say that we are trying to link ourselves with the Ahlul Bayt in as many ways as possible. And the ziyarah allows us to do that. When you stand, for example, in front of the shrine of Imam Hussein, or even from a distance, even when you recite the ziyarah from here, from the UK, for example, and you say, for example, in Ziyarat Warith, أشهد أنكم كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها. When you reaffirm this point of faith to say, Wallah, you Ahlul Bayt, you are pure. You did not do shirk. You did not leave Islam. You were true. This is a reaffirmation of faith. When you study the ziyarah, when you listen to the words, it's as if you are now writing your own creed. It's as if you are in the grave and you are being asked, who is your God? Where is your Qibla? What is your book? Who is your Prophet? Who is your Imam? What is your Salah? It's as if you are saying the answers to this. It's as if you're being prepared. Because you say this in the ziyarah, you say, you are my Imam. You follow the sunnah of the Prophet. Allah chose you for a sacrifice. You did the salah and you gave the zakah. These are questions that will be asked before Judgment Day and on Judgment Day. Who did you follow and why did you follow them? So the ziyarah has that cultural impact, yes. Has that social aspect, yes. But it also has a reaffirmation of faith, which is very, very important. To remind yourself, when you read the ziyarah, what it is, who it is I am following and why am I following them? Who it is that I'm standing before? Who is in that shrine over there? Was he just a nice person? Was he just the grandson of the Prophet? Or was he more than that? If it was just for the issue of family ties, then the Prophet has many relations. Hundreds of people are related to the Prophet. But why Al-Hussein salamullahi alayhi? Why him specifically? Because of what he lived for and what he died for. I can only know that when I read the ziyarah over there, the beautiful ziyarah, Ziyaratul Arith behind you over there. When you read the words, when you go through those words, and you say, this is Al-Hussein. Not a common person, not an ordinary person. To go and see the shrines themselves, the Ahlul Bayt have asked us to visit them. During the lifetime of Imam al-Hadi, a caravan of people, a group of people who were leaving, they passed by near the Imam's house in Samara. One of the companions of the Imam came to the Imam and said, do you have anything for me to tell them, to give to them? The Imam gave him certain amounts of money to be distributed, and he said, tell the head of the caravan to pray for me when he reaches Karbala. So this companion goes and tells the head of the caravan, Imam Ali al-Hadi, Imam Ali al-Naqi says, pray for him when you reach Karbala, when you reach the shrine of Al-Hussein. The leader of the caravan looked back puzzled and said, why should I pray for him? Isn't he the Imam? Doesn't he pray for himself? Why does he need me to pray for him? He in effect is the shrine. He himself is the prayer. Why should I pray for him? So this companion said, that's a good question. Went back to the Imam. He said, oh Imam, why is it that we should pray for you? You can pray over here for yourself. You don't need us to pray for you. He said, yes, you are right. But there are certain places that Allah elevates the power of prayer. There are certain places from which Allah wants to be prayed to. And Karbala, the shrine of Imam Hussein, is one of those places. So when you go to Karbala, when you recite the dua, when you recite the ziyarah, when you pray for your fellow mu'min and mu'minah, it has an amplified effect. Allah makes it reach and is answering the dua and the prayer quicker than in any other place. Because that place is special. Allah likes that place. Allah wants you to go to that place. So even today, when we see the throng of people go to Karbala or other places, other shrines, there is an element, the Ahlul Bayt have planned for this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has planned for this. He wants people to show emotion for the Ahlul Bayt. He wants people to reaffirm their faith at the shrines by doing the ziyarah, by reciting the ziyarah. So there is an element of planning behind this. Otherwise, if we take out these four categories, what is left? What is left is only legends and stories and ahadith that can be disputed, and then we have one school that pops up and another school that pops up. And alhamdulillah, we live in London where people have plenty of freedom of speech, maybe too much freedom of speech. And we've seen, unfortunately, some people can take advantage, Muslims and non-Muslims, print cartoons and make silly videos and write silly articles in newspapers. But also, unfortunately, amongst ourselves, our own Muslims, we have groups very close to us here in London. Some groups deny that Imam Sahib al-Zaman exists. There is no 12th Imam. They sit and they preach. Groups like this, in this number, they have their own places, they don't have their own meetings. They sit and they preach and discuss and say there is no 12th Imam. This is made up. There's 11 Imams. There's no such thing as a 12th Imam. Not born yet. Does not exist. We have other groups that sit there and read the Quran and give their own explanation. I think it says so and so. The other one will say, no, I think it means this and this. And the other one will disagree. Where's the training? Where's the understanding? How much effort have you put in? You work Monday to Friday in a pharmacy, and on Friday night you sit down, and nothing against the pharmacist, you sit down on Friday night and try to explain a whole surah from the Quran. You spend 6 days a week trying to earn a living, and on the 7th day you decide to give half an hour to try to preach or explain the Quran to everyone else. Where someone kills themselves 40, 50 years of their life, still hasn't managed to fully understand the Quran, and is very careful when he tries to explain some parts of it. But you decide in one night I can try to explain to people the Quran. That's one extreme. And then we have the other extreme. People who exaggerate the status of the Ahlul Bayt. People who rely on the weakest narrations. People who do not have the manners of Ahlul Bayt. Who curse, who swear, who do shameful things in front of the camera and put it on. They hide somewhere and they put it on TV and they claim to have this big school and groups of followers. This is the other extreme, unfortunately, that we have. And to both, the easiest thing to say is you can do what you want, you have freedom of speech, yes, but make your own school. Call it school Sheikh Fulan Fulan. Don't call it Shi'ism. Don't quote the school of Ahlul Bayt. Don't say I'm a Ja'fari. Say this is my religion. I have a new religion. I have a new school. Fine, no problem. There are hundreds of religions in the world. We don't have an issue with any of them. But don't say this is the school of Ja'far as-Sadiq. Do not say this is the school of Ahlul Bayt. No, 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 this is your school. If you don't believe in Imam al-Zaman, this is not the school of Ja'far as-Sadiq. If you use filthy language in front of the camera against other schools of thought, this is not the school of Ja'far. Where have we seen this? Did Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib use this kind of language? Did Al-Hussein, salamullah alayhi, when he saw his sons being killed, did he use this kind of language? When Al-Hussein saw his son go to battle and he slaughtered, what did he do? He started crying, not for his son. Zainab says, Aba Abdullah, I have never seen you cry before in battle. Why are you crying like this? He said, Zainab, I'm not crying because of the battle. I'm not crying because I'm afraid or sad. I'm crying because these people, unfortunately, did not hear my words. And they are going to go to hell, unfortunately. I wanted to avoid this. I'm trying to save them. He did not sit behind a protected group of people, behind somewhere, a shelter that nobody can find him, and say, so-and-so about Yazid ibn Muawiyah, so-and-so about Abu Sufyan, so-and-so. No, no, no. He never used any of this language. He addressed them properly. He said, Ya Shi'at Bani Sufyan. Do you know who I am? Oh, supporters of Abu Sufyan, the family of Abu Sufyan. Do you know who I am? I am the grandson of the one who Jibreel had to knock on the door before he entered. Who was Abu Sufyan? The one who spent all his life fighting my grandfather. Surely any sense, any common sense, even if you don't read and write, even if you can't go into the hadith, any common sense tells you that something is wrong when the grandson of the Prophet is being killed by the grandson of the enemy of the Prophet. So to those who have these deviant schools, we say, look, we congratulate you on your effort to try to learn something and to teach something. Well done for this effort, but unfortunately you've made mistakes because this is not what the school of Ahlul Bayt says. We have it before us. We have, for example, Tasheeh al-I'tiqad by Shaykh al-Mufid, correcting in very nice language some of the points that his teacher Shaykh al-Saduq said about what is the belief of the Shia. This is a very early work. This is written more than 1,100 years ago. Go back to this and see what our beliefs are. To deny the 12th Imam is not something that's acceptable. You cannot be a Shi'i if you deny the 12th Imam. Likewise, to sit and insult and to use terrible language and to form in trouble is not what the school of Ahlul Bayt is about. That's not what something the Imam will accept. So make your own school. Call it school of so-and-so, religion of so-and-so, no problem. We'll help you, we'll support you. But don't say this is the school of Ja'far as-Sadiq. Not acceptable. So my point here is we have to be very careful of not taking advantage of the powerful elements within Shia Islam. The social phenomena energize. The social phenomena should send us back to the roots. So when I stand before the shrine of Amir al-Mu'mineen, I don't just stand there and I feel sorry for his family and upset for him, and I feel a connection that's purely based on grief and just emotion out of normal human emotion. Rather, I should stand there and say, Amir al-Mu'mineen, you died for a good cause. You died in the prayer. That should make me think about prayer more. That should remind me, am I doing my prayers on time? That should remind me that Amir al-Mu'mineen woke up his killer to stand for the prayers. That Amir al-Mu'mineen was on the way to the mosque, he used to wake up the people. He used to recite the adhan. MashaAllah, look at how humble the Imam was. That he would recite the adhan, he would wake people up, he would try to say, come on, let's join the salah. And we have now people beating people with stick, get up, get up, get up, go to the salah, you must stand and pray. Look at the Imam's methods, and unfortunately look at some of the people's methods today. When we stand and read the ziyarah of Imam Muhammad Jiyad, Muhammad Taqi, for example, we should think Muhammad Jiyad was 25 years old. He spent a few years of his life in Baghdad trying to show that the school of Ahlul Bayt, against all the other schools, we heard the story of Ibn Aktham, the scholar who tried to make a fool of the Imam in front of everyone. The Imam turned it around, used this as an occasion to embarrass him, to say your school has no real grounding. Because your school is only dependent on opinions. It doesn't go back to the hadith, Silsila al-Dhahabiyya, an Abi al-Sadiq, an Abi al-Baqir, an Abi Zayn al-Abidin, an Abi al-Hussein, an Amir al-Mu'mineen, an Rasulullah, an Jibreel, an Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. None of the other schools can claim this. It does not exist. So we need to take pride. We need to be treating this as a treasure, that we have these phenomena that I discussed, the dua, the ziyarah, the majalis. the ulum of the Ahl Bayt that we study in our houses. From this we take energy, we take pride, we also take knowledge, we also show defiance and strength. If I tell you, and it happens every year, that this year 10,000 people will die going on the ziyarah of Arba'een. Will this stop most of you from going? No. In fact, more and more people tend to go when they hear that. Defiance, strength. Why? Because we say, well, I've done nothing. If I go and I get killed, it's nothing. I'm trying to relive the footsteps of Zayn al-Abidin. That doesn't compare to the sacrifice of Al-Hussein salam alayhi. He sends his brothers, his sons, his cousins, his nephews, says, go and sacrifice in the way of Allah. He takes his family with him and says, you are going to see us killed before you and you will be taken captive. Imagine this. Zainab was born in the lifetime, in the lifetime of the prophets. So Zainab was born at a time when, as I said, Jibreel would have to knock the door and ask permission before he entered. And now Zainab is being taken between cities and shown off as a slave. Do you see? Can you see how the situation has changed? What a great sacrifice that is. At one time for you to be sitting with angels in effect, and the other to be displayed for mockery in front of people. That is a sacrifice. So the ziyarah, when we hear someone is trying to stop the ziyarah, what does it make us do? It makes us want to go to the ziyarah even more. In the time of Mutawakkil, they used to take the palms, they used to cut off the hands of people who go to ziyarah to try to stop them. And people refused to stop the ziyarah. And they noticed so much so that people that used to come, when they tried to take their right palms off, cut their right hands off, they were already gone. And they would take their left hands. And then they would come to the ziyarah again, and they discovered that both hands were cut off. So sometimes they would take their ears, their nose, cut their feet off, sometimes they would behead them. It depends on the situation. It actually never stopped people going to the ziyarah. All through this time, defiance has a role, not because we just want to show that we have strength and we can oppose people. No, but we're trying to keep alive the memory of the Ahl Bayt. Why the memory of Ahl Bayt? Because through them we can learn about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Otherwise, what happens is, like I said, people sit in rooms somewhere and decide, this is what Allah wants, and that is what Allah wants, this is what I think, this is what He means, and start to have their own opinions. It's happened before to other schools, we know very well. It has happened to other religions. When people decided after Isa alayhi salam to sit and write the Gospels, to sit and write the Bible, 100 years after Prophet Isa alayhi salam had passed away. 100 years after Prophet Isa had left, someone gathered and wrote and made his own commentary on the Bible. And then many years later, the creed changed. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Nicene Creed, for example, which happens a few hundred years after Isa alayhi salam, where they decide to sit and try to agree what is really Christianity. Compare that to what we have, which is exact points about what to believe. Allah is so-and-so, Muhammad is so-and-so, justice is so-and-so, Al-Akhirah is so-and-so, belief in the Quran is so-and-so. It's very specific, very exact. You cannot compare it to any other religion where it was formed by committees and groups, and these guys became Protestant, the other guys became Catholic. In the school of Ahl Bayt, no such thing exists. And if anybody wants to make such attempts, we say sorry. The school of Ja'far Sadiq is very clear, it's in front of us. This is some other school, another faith. So inshallah, the discussion should be ongoing, that the human element of the social phenomena is very powerful, very, very important. That Allah wants us to seek Him through the Ahl Bayt. And He knows what effect it has. Just like I said, holding up a picture of somebody who's starving and hungry has more effect than me just asking for charity. Likewise, when you hear about the Ahl Bayt and you are told through them learn about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it has more effect than when you're told just follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not to dilute it the opposite way, to amplify your attention towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين.
Thank you very much. We now have some time for questions.
In your view, do you see anything negative as far as the social aspect of Shi'ism is concerned? Not as a believer, but as a scholar. I mean, because everyone from any religion would just cite the positive aspects. I want to know whether you're objective enough to see whether there is anything negative. And also, I mean, there are many sacrifices outside Ahl Bayt or related to. How come we are ignoring all that? Well, Zayd also, sacrificed and he got himself killed. And the Zayd is in Yemen, they regard him as like, second Hussein. But we totally ignore him. And there are many examples in history which we totally ignore. So, and one reason is because we have certain faith, and so we follow that, and then we emphasize that as a matter of faith, but not as an objective. And so I'm wondering whether you see anything negative in the social aspect of Shi'ism.
Thank you. I haven't seen another scholar here. I'm just a student, so you'll have to speak to the scholars. I'm unfortunately not at that level yet. But as just an observer, as somebody, if I attempt to be neutral and let's say outside of the faith, I wouldn't say there is anything negative about the social phenomena themselves. If there is anything negative, it is what people do. So to give you an example, there's nothing wrong with Islam, but there's something wrong with Muslims. I hope that's clear. So the social phenomena themselves, nothing negative about them. What people do, how they behave, yes. And unfortunately, that's always been the case. So the categories I've listed, the phenomena that I was discussing themselves, they are pure. There's nothing wrong with them. They are absolutely correct and true and pure. How people observe them, what people do on these occasions, how they behave, how they relate to other people, yes. There are negatives, there are ways to be improved. Modernization. Standing and reciting poetry was done during the lifetime of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq. 1400 years later, we've got all this technology, yet still, and I'm not saying this is bad, it's good, but we still have the same method. We should have developed many more methods. We should have developed 100 more methods. Now people can sit in a village in China somewhere and watch what's happening in Washington, D.C. And it is good that we congregate and we have someone standing, but we also need to develop other methods because this might not be available to all kinds of people. Alhamdulillah, some centers now are putting the lectures online, recording, but even more, we need to make further use of technology. We need to make further advancements to try to teach the school of Ahl Bayt. So with regards to the first part, I don't see anything negative with the phenomena themselves. What people do, this is unfortunately something, it's a human thing. With regards to the other sacrifices that we don't focus our attention on, it's commonly narrated that there's 124,000 prophets. How many are narrated in the Quran? How many listed? How many names are listed in the Quran? 20, 30, 40? Not more. These common numbers, yeah? How many can we name? How many stories do we know? So why doesn't Allah mention the rest? Is it only because He favors these ones and He doesn't like the rest? He says so many were killed by Bani Israel. Bani Israel used to start their sunrise and by sunset have killed 100 prophets or 70 prophets. They sacrificed, they were murdered, they were killed. So when we focus on the 14 infallibles, it doesn't mean that the others have not sacrificed. They have. It is only that we, our knowledge, our science, our commands are to elevate the status of these 14. Not to the detriment of the others, but to ensure that these 14 are the ones who are guiding us. We are to be guided by Muhammad and Ali and Fatima and Hassan and Hussein. Not to be guided by other people. We have to be very clear. The school of Ja'far ibn Muhammad as-Sadiq says, you follow these 14 infallibles. We respect the others. We commemorate them. We may read and learn and teach about them. We show full respect, but we cannot compare them to the 14 infallibles.
Thank you very much for your talk. Just talking about the social phenomena in particular, all of them are very, sometimes, the whole goal of the Imams and the Prophet ﷺ and Islam as a whole, many of the sort of principles that underpin all of their work, the idea of social justice, the idea of equality, the idea of working towards a life for everybody in this world and in the hereafter, all of these ideas seem to be secondary to these social phenomena. So, for example, whether it was the Hawza or the any of the four that were mentioned, when there is when a lot of Shia, for example, focus on the primary, so for example, just the Majalis or the Hawza or any of those, but not on the secondary, on the sort of goal, on the maqasid, on what's actually intended, is there a problem? Because what we're saying is that the social phenomenon are these things. The social phenomena among the Shia are not that they're social justice bearers around the world who are standing up and saving. What do you think about that?
Again, very similar to the last point. It's not the fault of the Imams. It's not the fault of the social phenomena themselves if people don't fully make use of them. Imam says during one of the Hajj seasons, one of his companions was standing to him and he said, to the words of the effect, MashaAllah, look at how many people. What did the Imam say? Ma akthar al-dhajij wa aqall al-hajij. A great amount of noise, a great amount of commotion, a very few amount of real hajjaj. Imam Zain al-Abidin says to Shibli, did you go on Hajj this year? He says, yes. And he has a beautiful hadith. He said, did you do so and 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 so? It lists a whole number of things. And she said, no, I did tawaf and this, but I forgot. I didn't really pay attention to this. He said, you've wasted your Hajj. Hajj isn't about doing tawaf and sa'i, cutting parts of your hair, going to the Jamrah. It's much more than that. If you only did these rituals, you've missed the whole point. There's something behind this that you've missed. You should know more. You're a companion. So the question that you're posing, the answer is very similar to the first one. It is not the fault of the Imams nor the phenomena themselves. But people, unfortunately, do not always have the ability to grasp what is behind this phenomena. So we have to make a distinction between simple and a bit more advanced and scholarly. And most of the people are going to be of the first kind. It is even the same in worship. The worship of the slaves, the worship of the businessmen and the merchants and traders, and the worship of the free man. The Imams themselves have narrated this hadith. The worship of the slave is he worships Allah because he's afraid of punishment. Because he hears he's going to go to hell, so he decides to keep to prayer, just like a little kid. If you don't do your homework, you're going to be in trouble tonight. If you don't do salah, you're going to go to hell. Very simple. Number two, if you do so and so, you'll get X amount. You'll get this much thawab. You'll get so and so reward. You'll go to Jannah. This is the second type. So a bit more advanced in the way of thinking. Now I can get something back. But still very basic in a way. Looking for a reward, give and take. The third level, I worship Allah because He deserves to be worshipped. Not because someone tells me or someone explains to me I get so and so, but because Allah should be worshipped. Because I know Allah should be worshipped. I know what insignificance I have to Him. I know that everything I have is totally reliant on Him. If Allah asks me to rely on myself, I disappear like that. So, unfortunately, it is just the levels of understanding among people.
But wouldn't it be better if the social phenomena were these social justice? Because as you were saying, there are lots of people who are of this first category who find it very difficult to understand that level behind, as you were talking about. So would it not make sense, rather than the social phenomenon that we should be emphasizing, or that is indicative of being a Shia, being this primary thing, it should be the secondary, this idea of social justice? Should that not take a more primary stand as a fundamental part of who we are as Shias, rather than as a secondary part of the fact that we believe in Imam Jafar Sadiq and therefore we believe in social justice? No, it's social justice.
It's not secondary, it just depends. You, for example, read the ziyarah and you will look at each word, you will try to understand it. Other people might not even be able to read. We have people that go on the ziyarah today, they can't read and write. For them to sit down and say to them, let me speak to you about social, or for them to even try to understand the concept of social justice, it doesn't make any sense to them.
So it's still valuable for them?
Of course it is valuable for them. Because they are employing the first part of faith, which is the simplest fast, which is the worship of slaves, let's say. For them, they are reaching the first goal, they've done enough. But for you, Allah will judge each person according to their capacity. And this is the part about justice. When we say what is divine justice, is to give each person their capacity. You don't have any rights towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so we can't say to give equal rights. There's no such thing as equality, because it's unfair to ask you to run 100 meters faster than Usain Bolt. You're human, you should run as fast as him. No such thing. Can't do that equality. You can't ask you and one of the sisters here to lift the same amount of weight. It's not fair. That's equality, but that's not fairness. That's not justice. Justice, true justice, is giving everything its capacity. Why you have different capacities, that's another discussion. That is before we are created, that's how Allah created the previous worlds, that is how Allah created the light that precede our creation, that's something else. There's numerous factors. Your parents, your background, the environment, there's numerous factors why we have different capacities. But Allah gives you your capacity. So for Him to say, I want each one of you to attend the dars of Ayatollah Khouei, not fair. But to say, I want each one of you to at least pray, at least remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at least have something about the Ahl-Bayt. That's fairness, that's justice. Because you'll be able to show it in different ways. You read the ziyarah and you fully understand it, somebody might be only able to go to the shrine. And that's it. Touch the shrine, reach the shrine, go back home. For them, they've understood. Their capacity is that.
So, but as you're talking about just that, one person, for example, will go to ziyarah and they won't necessarily understand what they're doing. But we will still encourage them to go to do the ziyarah because that's a level and what they can do. Were we to have encouraged that same person to spend their time and money working for social justice, for example, would that not have fulfilled Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salam and the idea of Shia Islam's phenomenon far more and far more powerfully? But it seems like we are focusing on this primary thing rather than the actual goal. Is that?
I'm sure you know the rules of logic. Why does it have to be either or? Either this or this. Why not and? We go to ziyarah, we pay attention to all the social phenomena, we also look at concepts and principles of social justice. We also encourage people to go in further into religion. It should not be either or. We only have time for one or the other. Either everyone starts to sit and study and nobody should go and do so and so, or the opposite. No, it should be both. Imam Ja'far Sadiq spends his, let's say his year or his month, if we look at it, dars, lessons after lesson after lesson, debate after debate after debate. Muharram comes, he walks out barefoot. He starts crying. He shows grief. He has a poet come to his house. Not either or, and. This is an important element, the and element. Knowledge and emotion, not one or the other. Pure emotion, no knowledge. Pure knowledge, no emotion. It's a combination of both. This is what true Shi'ism is.
And you don't feel there's just one at the moment too much on the emotion side and not enough on the knowledge side?
Again, not the fault of the social phenomena. What people do with themselves, with their time, that's something else. That's a sociological issue.
Any more questions?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This might be a very opinion of mine, and maybe you refer me to the same answer you already given. We have had such brilliant leaders, imams. We have had such logical arguments. Why has this not been filtered to the followers of Ahlul Bayt? The followers of Ahlul Bayt have always been oppressed since history. Now there must be some reason why we are always defensive. We are always on the back foot. So we have such brilliant teachers. Compared to any other sects in the world, there must be some logical argument behind this, I feel.
It's just historical circumstances, to be honest. We never have the followers of Amir al-Mu'mineen being a majority. Always, the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen, during the lifetime of the Prophet, he was within a minority himself. There was a group, Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, the Prophet was in a minority himself. There was a group of Muslims, larger group of Muslims says, we shouldn't follow what you want to do. On his deathbed, he asked for pen and paper basically to write something. The majority of them did not want that. So historically, the school of Ahl Bayt has always been a minority and Muslims have always been a minority. So a minority within a minority. Amir al-Mu'mineen was always accused of doing something or the other. The Prophet himself, when the command was given to close all the doors of the houses leading into the great mosque of Medina, what did people say? Favoritism. Look, he left his door open and Ali's door open. And the Prophet said, look, it's not up to me. Here is the verse commanding me to do so and so. It is not up to me. I did not choose. So to be in a minority means you'll always have to take accusations and try to refute them. Plus, it is not within the etiquette of the Ahl Bayt to start attacking the other schools and try to, let's say, proselytize in a way or to go out after all the other schools. It is always for them to say, look, we know what we're doing. We have the truth, we'd like to explain it to you if you give us the opportunity. And that is why the Imams used to go on Hajj. Most of the Imams went dozens of times to the Hajj. Some of the Imams went 35 times by foot. Some of them suffered to get to the Hajj. Why? Because the Hajj was an excellent opportunity to get people from different areas, from Masr, from Habasha, from Iraq, from Khurasan, from other areas to meet, and it was the perfect time for the Imam to preach to lots of different people. Not everyone could come to Medina, but Hajj you could slip in with the masses. Perfect opportunity. So the Imams themselves, their etiquette is shown to say that we have the truth, we will spend all our life explaining to it. But we're not going to go after everybody else and say, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, this is how it is, you need to do this. It's not in their etiquette to do that. And yes, we can try to explain to people, we can publish books, and we have centers now, alhamdulillah, and websites, and centers for studies, and schools that are there to teach, but it is not within our etiquette. Maybe you see this as being too defensive, but it's not within the etiquette of the Al-Bayt to go around attacking everyone else and trying to convince everyone else that they're wrong and we're right.
My point is the amount of logic we have in our explanation. Why can't this be logic, in whether he's a person of any sect will accept this? How come our logic has not filtered to people of other sects?
I don't agree with the fact that everyone will accept logic, because alhamdulillah we've got lots of examples and people who, you show them perfect logic, it just doesn't make any sense. And that's just because, if all humans were very logical, then we wouldn't have any problems. Then none of us would have followed shaitan, none of us, our forefathers, we wouldn't have reached where we are today. All of us would have been on the same path because things would have been logical. Nuh alayhi salam preaches for 950 years. 950 years. Isa alayhi salam shows dozens of miracles. Musa alayhi salam, the Prophet says their feet had not dried from crossing the sea. And as soon as they reached the other side, they said, make us an idol to worship. They just crossed the sea. And there's a Prophet that says, I speak with Allah on a daily basis. You can't say to these kinds of people, I'm going to speak to you logically, because it won't have an effect. Sometimes logic has a limit to it. It has an effect on certain people, but not everyone. You can't expect all the logical arguments to be given to everybody, and all of a sudden everyone starts to understand.
So can we change the way of teaching so that it becomes more logical to people?
Not change the way, but innovate new ways. Yes, I agree with that. Innovate new ways, reach more languages, use technology, use better curricula, use new methods. Correct, yes. That's definitely something that we need to do in this modern day and age. We can't rely on the old methods and the old way of doing things. We use them, but we need to add to them. Again, it shouldn't be either or. It's those and the new methods.
Any more questions? No? I think we'll end there. Thank you. Thank you very much. Salawat.